Ever walk into a dark room and, like, your eyes kind of need a minute?
Yeah, totally.
That's your pupils, right?
Exactly.
They dilate to let in more light. Helps you see.
It's like automatic adjustment.
But what if they stay that way? Dilated, I mean, even when it's not dark anymore.
That's when it gets interesting, right? That's what we're diving into, that kind of persistent dilation. Mydriasis, it's called.
Mydriasis, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Had a feeling it'd have a more complex name.
It sounds a little intimidating, but really it's just a sign, a signal.
Our bodies are full of those, aren't they? Signals, I mean.
Right, like little clues. And this mydriasis thing, it can be surprisingly telling about, well, what's going on inside.
More than meets the eye.
Huh, good one. But seriously, yeah. And to really get why it matters, we gotta kind of zoom in on like the mechanics of it all.
Love it when we get a little science-y.
So picture this. Your pupil, that black circle right in the center.
Yep, got it.
That's like the aperture on a camera.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
It controls the light coming in, and the iris, that colorful part around the pupil, that's doing the adjusting.
Like opening and closing the aperture.
You got it. And it's all thanks to these tiny muscles in the iris. But here's the kicker. Those muscles are controlled by a nerve, runs all the way from the brain to the eye. Oculomotor nerve, it's called.
Direct connection, eye to brain. That's wild.
Exactly. But, and this is important, that nerve, it's kind of delicate.
Delicate how?
Think of it like, a fiber optic cable.
Okay, I'm with you.
Transmitting info, right. Even a little pressure on that cable can mess up the signal. And that's where you can get mydriasis.
So the signal gets disrupted. The pupil doesn't constrict like it should. It just stays kind of wide open.
Exactly. Body's a system. Everything's connected.
Yeah.
One little hiccup in one spot can throw things off somewhere else entirely.
So mydriasis, it's not always a bad thing, but it could be a sign something else is up.
Exactly. Which
Yeah.
is why we're doing a deep dive, right?
Right. And honestly, I was kind of surprised going through all the research for this, just how many things can cause it. I mean, we're talking medications, we're talking recreational drug use even.
Oh, yeah. The range is pretty surprising.
And head injuries even, right?
You're right. It runs the gamut from totally everyday stuff to, well, situations that are way more serious.
Which I guess is why we got to break it all down.
Exactly. I got to know what we're dealing with, right?
So let's start with the everyday stuff, maybe, like medications. This one, anticholinergics, that one kept popping up in my research.
Oh, yeah. Anticholinergics, they're in a lot of stuff.
They are. Allergy meds I saw, even antidepressants.
Yep. Super common.
Wow.
Really useful for a lot of things. But yeah, side effects. Got to be aware of them.
So for those of us who don't speak fluent pharmacy, what are they doing that causes this whole mydriasis thing?
Think of it this way. Our nervous system, it's all about communication. And these chemical messengers, neurotransmitters, that's how the communication happens.
Okay, bear with this.
And there's this one, acetylcholine. It's a big deal for muscle contraction, including those tiny muscles we were just talking about, the ones in the iris.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
So anticholinergics, they block acetylcholine. They interfere with it, basically.
So the iris muscles don't get the message to constrict.
Exactly. The communication's all messed up.
Wow. So even something like allergy meds, which you think, oh, totally harmless.
Right. It's a good reminder that even with meds that seem super common, there can be these like ripple effects.
Really highlights why talking to your doctor is important, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Every time.
Okay. So that's medications, kind of everyday stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the more, I don't know, recreational side of things. Drugs. Mydriasis is linked to that too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially stimulants. Things like cocaine, amphetamines, that kind of thing. They mess with the neurotransmitters too.
So same communication lines, different kind of interference.
You got it. Though the way they interfere can be pretty different. Some drugs, they like mimic the naturally occurring neurotransmitters, flood the brain with signals.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, mydriasis can be one of the results, amongst other things, of course.
Right, other more obvious signs.
Usually, yeah.
But that's wild though, right? Like these substances, they can have such a big impact on something as, I don't know, seemingly small as your pupil.
It's that interconnectedness, you know, shows you just how powerful those systems are, even on a tiny scale.
Makes you think. So we've got meds, we've got recreational drugs.
Yeah.
But my research also turned up some scarier stuff, like head injuries. That can cause mydriasis too, right?
Yeah, that's where things get a bit more intense. Remember that nerve we talked about, the oculomotor nerve? Super delicate.
Oh, right, the fiber optic cable.
Exactly. Well, head injuries, they can cause swelling, bleeding sometimes, puts pressure on that nerve.
And that messes with the pupil signals.
Exactly. And in those cases, it's usually a sign that something's really wrong. Needs immediate attention.
Okay, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
So how do you know, like, if your dilated pupils are no big deal or if it's, time to panic?
That's where the other symptoms come in. We'll get into those more in a bit. But basically, if it's just the mydriasis on its own, you're probably fine.
It's all about the context.
Exactly. The bigger picture.
So we've covered a lot of ground on, like, what causes mydriasis, but what does it actually feel like? Like, if you've got it, what's going on?
Oh, it can really vary. Like some people, they don't even notice it. It's mild enough.
Really?
Yeah. But for others, it can be pretty disruptive depending on what's causing it.
That makes sense. But there are some common things, right? I was reading about blurred vision, for one.
Oh, yeah. Blurred vision is a big one,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to focus on something up close.
Like reading a book?
Exactly. Or like trying to text someone. Anything where your eyes have to work a bit harder.
So it's those little muscles again, huh? The ones in the iris.
Yep, exactly. When they're not working right, they can't control the light coming in as well. And that messes with your focus.
Like a camera lens that can't quite, lock on.
Perfect analogy. It's like your eyes are constantly trying to adjust, but they can't quite get it right.
And then I saw something about light sensitivity.
Oh, yeah, that's another common one.
Makes sense. If your pupils are stuck wide open, you're getting a lot more light than usual, right?
Exactly. And that can be really uncomfortable for some people, especially if they're already prone to headaches or migraines.
Like sunglasses indoors kind of situation.
Sometimes, yeah, it can be that intense.
Wow. So it's like these everyday symptoms, blurred vision, being sensitive to light. It'd be easy to ignore those, right?
Oh, definitely. Especially if you don't realize they could be connected to something else going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you know when it's like actually something to worry about?
That's the key, right? It's all about the context. Like, are these symptoms coming on suddenly? Are they paired with anything else, like a headache, dizziness, maybe even seeing double?
Okay, double vision, that sounds bad.
It can be. And those kind of symptoms, especially with the mydriasis, that's when you gotta get checked out, like right away.
Serious stuff. Stroke, you mean?
Could be, yeah. Or pressure building up in the brain. Definitely not something to mess around with. So, like, if you're ever unsure, better safe than sorry, right?
Always. So when is it time to see a doctor then? Like, is it as simple as my pupils are dilated, better make an appointment?
Not necessarily. I mean, remember, mydriasis on its own, it can be totally harmless.
Right, dark room, certain medications, all that.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
if it's sticking around, like it's persistent, or if you're getting those other symptoms on top of it, yeah, definitely get it checked out.
Or if it's messing with your life, like making it hard to see or anything.
Exactly. That's a good point. If it's impacting your day-to-day, that's always a good reason to talk to a doctor.
Okay, makes sense. So speaking of seeing a doctor, there was this one thing in the research, this, what was it? BEEU, I think?
Yeah. Benign episodic unilateral mydriasis. Bit of a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
Kind of mysterious sounding. What is that exactly?
So basically, it's when one pupil, just one, will dilate randomly, out of the blue.
Only one, not both. That's weird. Why does that happen?
That's the million-dollar question. Honestly, they don't really know for sure. Some think it might be linked to migraines.
Migraines, huh?
Yeah, or like other neurological things. Stress, even. Or maybe certain medications can trigger it. Jury's still out, really.
Huh. So it's like your eyes trying to tell you something, but nobody's quite sure what?
Pretty much. But the good news is it's usually harmless. Those episodes, they're temporary, don't usually hurt or anything, and they're not really a sign of some bigger, scarier problem.
Okay, that's good to know. Still got to be a little freaky, though, right? Like, what's happening to my eye?
For sure, especially if you don't know what it is. So yeah, if it happens more than once, definitely tell your doctor about it just in case.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. So we've talked about what it feels like, some red flags to watch out for.
Yeah.
But let's say you do end up at the doctor's office. What happens then? How do they actually figure out what's causing the mydriasis?
Okay, so you're at the doctor's. You've got maybe some mydriasis going on, maybe some other weird eye stuff.
Right.
What happens? Like, how do they actually figure out what's up?
Well, it's kind of like detective work in a way,
Oh, I like it.
right? First things first, they're going to want to know your story.
Like my life story.
Not quite, but like what medications you're on, any recent illnesses, that sort of thing. Oh, and other symptoms. Super important. Other symptoms.
Right, connecting the dots.
Exactly. Got to see the bigger picture. And then, of course, they'll want to actually, look at your eyes.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are eye doctors, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, like, really look. Check your vision, see how the pupils react to light, all that.
The reflexes, right?
Yeah.
That we were talking about before.
Yep. tells them a lot about how well those nerves and muscles are working. So once they've got all that info, your history, the exam results, then it's like, okay, time to figure out treatment.
And that's got to depend on the cause, right? Like you can't treat everything the same way.
You're way ahead of me. That's exactly it. It's about treating the root cause, not just masking the mydriasis itself.
Right. So if it's a medication side effect, you might switch things up, try something different.
Exactly. Or adjust the dosage maybe. If it's drugs, well, that's a whole other conversation.
Definitely. And what about like head injuries? You mentioned those.
Right. In those cases, the mydriasis, it's kind of the least of your worries. Got to treat the injury itself, whatever that involves. Surgery, maybe.
So sometimes treating the mydriasis directly isn't even the priority.
Exactly. But there are times when they do need to focus on it directly. You mentioned pilocarpine earlier.
Oh, yeah. That was in the research, right? It's for glaucoma, but it also like shrinks your pupils.
It does. It's pretty cool, actually. It kind of mimics this neurotransmitter acetylcholine, the one that's so important for those iris muscles.
Oh, right. The communication one.
Yep. So pilocarpine basically gives those muscles a boost, helps them constrict the pupil like they're supposed to.
That's amazing. So it's like a backup communication system?
In a way, yeah, but, and this is important, it's prescription only.
Right, not just something you pick up at the drugstore.
Exactly. It has its own side effects. Got to be careful with it. But it shows you how understanding the science behind it all can lead to some pretty targeted treatments.
It's wild, isn't it? Like your pupils, they seem so simple, but there's this whole world of like physiology and stuff going on behind the scenes.
Right. It's like a whole hidden language our bodies are speaking.
We've got to learn how to listen.
Exactly. Pay attention to those signals.
This whole deep dive has been fascinating. I feel like I've learned so much and kind of makes you think twice about like every time you walk into a dark room now.
Right. You're going to be noticing everyone's pupils now.
Totally. But seriously, it's all about awareness,
Yeah.
right? Knowing the signs, knowing when to be concerned, when to talk to a doctor.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, my friend.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Big thanks to you. Always a pleasure picking your brain.
Anytime. Always up for a good eye chat.
And everyone listening, thanks for being here. Stay curious, and we'll see you on the flip side.